True History Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
True History Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Aria Vale slipped through the rain-slick streets of Tidebrook late that night, her camera bag bouncing against her hip like a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. At 32, she had covered conflict zones and celebrity scandals, but nothing had prepared her for the storm that had engulfed her own life. She'd been married to Dr. Ezra Quinn, a rising star at St. Rowan Medical Center, since she was 27. Their early days had been electric. Midnight debates over philosophy, stolen kisses in empty newsrooms, and mutual promises that nothing could ever tear us apart. But over time, deadlines and late-night hospital calls pulled them into separate orbits. Ezra devoted himself to saving strangers. Aria chased headlines. The distance between them grew until, that evening, a single argument shattered all pretense of unity. Ezra's shouts chased Aria out into the howling wind. Their vows folded like wet paper in the downpour. Meanwhile, beneath the neon glow of Tidebrook Harbor's weathered piers, Finn Hartley stood knee-high in muddy water, guiding a rusted net along the pilings. At 35, Finn had carved his life out of concrete and steel, first as an apprentice on cargo ships, then as a civil engineer overseeing Tidebrook's sprawling waterfront docks. His wife, Isla, had accepted a prestigious assignment in Lisbon 3 years earlier, promising a brief separation. Yet weeks bled into months and months into years, leaving Finn a single father to 6-year-old Emery and 4-year-old Nolan. Every morning, he pushed a cart of blueprints to the Foglight Cafe so the children could claim their ritual Harbor View pancakes before school. By night, he returned to half-furnished rooms echoing with Isla's absence. That same night, when Aria stumbled to the edge of the harbor, her heels lost in the mud, Finn's flashlight beam cut through the black. At first, he mistook her for a lost tourist, someone who'd braved the storm for a look at the churning tide. But when she cupped her hands over a trembling mouth to stanch her tears, he recognized the same vulnerability he'd seen in his own reflection too many times. Without hesitation, he waded ashore, draping his heavy coat around her shoulders. He didn't ask questions, not yet. He simply directed her to the warmth of his truck and drove her to St. Rowan Medical Center without a word. Inside the flickering emergency wing, Aria's eyes darted from his calm profile to the antiseptic lights overhead. Finn settled her into a wheelchair, whispered reassuring words she couldn't quite catch, and paid the admission fee without glancing at her credentials. As the admitting nurse guided her through sliding doors, Aria realized 2 things. That Finn Hartley was a stranger who had just saved her life, and that, for the first time in months, she felt safe. And so, the storm that night became more than a mere downpour. It became the beginning of a new chapter, one written not in headlines or blueprints, but in shared glances and unspoken understanding. In the depth of Tidebrook's tempest, 2 fractured souls found a fragile harbor in each other. Aria Vale trudged along the slick wooden planks of Tidebrook's old fishing pier, each step threatening to send her sprawling into the black water below. The wind howled so fiercely that it tore at her trench coat, and rain pelted her face like icy needles. In the distance, the silhouette of a freighter's deck lights bobbed through the haze. But the rest of the harbor lay shrouded in darkness and driving rain. She had no phone signal, no umbrella, and nowhere left to go. Only hours earlier, her life had felt unshakable. A thriving career, a spacious loft downtown, a promising book deal in the works. But after the fight with Ezra, the final straw that shattered her sense of home, she found herself wandering, numb and disoriented. The rain seemed to echo her confusion, every drop a reminder that she was utterly alone. At the far end of the pier, a rusted metal container groaned with each gust, and Aria paused to steady herself against its side. A flash of lightning illuminated a tangle of coiled ropes, damp nets, and overturned lobster traps. Something about the chaos felt familiar. She, too, felt tangled in a net of her own making, caught between marriage and ambition, hurt and hope. She wrapped her arms around herself, teeth chattering. The storm turned the harbor into a roiling beast. Waves splashed over the edge, and the wooden boards threatened to buck beneath her feet. Aria weighed her options. She could retreat to the main road, but the wind would push her back. She could try to hail a cab, but no driver would risk the flooded streets. As thunder rumbled, her heart pounded in time with the storm. Then she heard it, the distant, purposeful thud of boots against wood. At first, she thought it was another fisherman seeking shelter, but the silhouette that emerged from the gloom was a man, tall and solid, carrying a heavy-duty flashlight. Its beam cut a bright path through the downpour, illuminating raindrops like diamonds suspended in air. He wore work boots caked in mud and a high-collared coat that looked both practical and weatherproof. "Hey," he called, voice low but carrying over the storm. "You okay out here?"
Aria blinked,
startled by the directness of the question. No one had spoken to her in hours. I'm fine," she managed, her voice hoarse. "Just lost." He took another step forward, his flashlight carving a circle of warmth in the cold night. Rain dripped from the brim of his cap, and his eyes, steady, kind, locked onto hers. "You look like you've been better," he said. He paused, watching the waves crash. "Name's Finn Hartley. I live just up the road." Aria swallowed. "Aria Vale." "Aria, then. You shouldn't be here alone. This pier's dangerous, when it's flooded." He extended a hand. "Come on. I've got a truck downshore. You can warm up." Her mind raced. Should she trust this stranger? All her instincts screamed caution, yet exhaustion and desperation won out. She nodded, stepping toward him. Finn led her down the slippery boards, his grip firm on her elbow, guiding her away from the edge. Each step felt surreal. One moment she stood alone in the storm. The next she was in the protective orbit of someone who could have been a character in her own feature story. They reached a battered pickup truck idling near a storage shed. Its heater steamed the windshield, and the engine's vibration thrummed reassuringly. Finn swung open the passenger door. "Hop in," he said, pulling her inside and shutting out the wind with a click. The warm air hit Aria's face, and she closed her eyes, savoring it. He walked around to the driver's side and slid in beside her. "Name's Finn. I'm a civil engineer at Tidebrook Docks." He glanced at her camera bag. "You shoot the harbor?" She hesitated, then forced a weak laugh. "I'm a photojournalist. Usually I cover less wet assignments." She wiped rain from her glasses. "I got distracted. Stories have a way of catching us when we least expect it," he said, starting the engine. The headlights cut through sheets of rain as he navigated them off the pier and onto a narrow road lined with abandoned warehouses. Aria watched the puddles churn alongside the tires. "I had an argument," she said softly, "with someone I thought I knew." She stared out the window. "It left me feeling like I'd lost everything." Finn listened, his hands steady on the wheel. "Sometimes losing your footing forces you to find solid ground elsewhere," he offered. There was no pity in his tone, only calm understanding. They reached a small hospital sign. St. Rowan Medical Center. "I'll wait outside," Finn said, cutting the engine. "You go in and get checked. You shouldn't be risking pneumonia tonight." Aria opened the door, the cold air rushing in again, but she turned back to him. "Why help me?" she asked, voice trembling. He shrugged, as though it were simple. "Everyone deserves someone to show up when the world's caving in." Aria stood on the hospital steps, the storm still raging, as Finn lifted a small bag of his own, the only dry clothes he could offer, over the glass doors. When they swung shut behind her, Aria realized her life had tilted on its axis in the span of one rain-soaked encounter. In that hurricane moment, she had found an unexpected ally, a man whose kindness arrived like a lighthouse beam in her darkest night. Aria Vale sat on the edge of a narrow examination table in St. Rowan Medical Center's emergency ward, her trench coat still damp and heavy against her skin. Around her, fluorescent lights hummed softly, and the muffled footsteps of nurses echoed down the corridor. She stared at a row of medical posters, anatomy charts, hand-washing reminders, trying to steady her breathing. A soft knock at the doorframe interrupted her thoughts. Finn Hartley stepped in, holding 2 steaming cups of black coffee. He set one on the small tray table beside her and offered the other. "Thought you might need this," he said, voice warm. Aria wrapped her cold hands around the paper cup. The heat seeped in slowly, chasing away the chill of the storm. She took a hesitant sip, then met his gaze. "Thank you," she murmured. He pulled a chair close and sat, keeping a respectful distance. "How are you feeling?" She shrugged, tracing the rim of her cup with her thumb. "Physically, I'll live. Emotionally, I'm a bit of a wreck." She stared at her own reflection in the dark coffee surface. "I've covered wars. I've interviewed presidents. But nothing prepared me for my own personal fallout." Finn nodded, folding his hands in his lap. "Sometimes the battles closest to home are the hardest." Aria blinked, surprised at his insight. "You've been through divorce?" He hesitated just a moment, then shook his head.
"No.
My wife's been away a long time. Work assignment in Lisbon. It's complicated. But I know what it's like to come home to an empty house." Her heart tightened. "I'm sorry." He inhaled slowly. "Don't be. It's just, life doesn't always follow the plans we make." He paused, as though weighing whether to add more. "What happened with your husband?" She closed her eyes, picturing the loft they once shared, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. A bookshelf crammed with first-edition paperbacks, and evenings spent debating everything from quantum theory to indie film. "Ezra and I, we grew apart. I thought our story was stronger than deadlines and midnight shifts. But I guess it wasn't." Finn studied her, compassion in his eyes. "It's hard when the people we love become strangers." Aria let out a shaky laugh. "Strangers who once knew all our secrets." She took another sip of coffee. "I used to think I could handle anything. I've seen bomb sites and natural disasters. But the day I saw my own vows crumble, that hit me harder than any war zone." Finn reached out, covering her hand with his. "You don't have to go through it alone." Her breath caught. No one had offered to stay before, not in her personal life. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" He gave a small, rueful smile. "Because I felt alone. Because I believe people deserve kindness when they're at their lowest." He cleared his throat. "Besides, you looked like you needed someone to show up." Aria felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back. I don't know how to say thank you."
Finn shrugged lightly.
"No need. Just rest. And maybe tomorrow, when the rain stops, we can grab breakfast on me." She hesitated, then managed a nod. "Okay." The next morning, Aria woke to sunlight filtering through narrow blinds. Her head throbbed lightly, but a fresh pot of coffee brewed in a drip machine beside her makeshift bed. A small note lay on the bedside table in Finn's precise handwriting. "Meet me at Foglight Cafe at 8 a.m. Pancakes on me."
"Finn."
Aria smiled, a rare, genuine curve of her lips, and dressed quickly. She left her camera bag at the nurse's station, slipped on dry jeans and sneakers, and pushed open the hospital's side door. The air was crisp, the harbor sparkling under a pale dawn. Foglight Cafe sat on a corner overlooking Tidebrook Harbor, its windows steamed with warmth. Inside, pastel walls were lined with framed photographs of fishing boats, old lighthouses, and families gathered around breakfast tables. Finn waved from a corner booth, where 2 plates of fluffy pancakes and mugs of coffee waited. "Morning," he said, standing to offer a hand. "Better?" Aria settled into the booth, inhaling the scent of maple syrup and freshly brewed coffee. "Much." She took a bite of pancake, eyes widening. "These are incredible." He laughed lightly. "My kids say I make a mean pancake." She smiled as she ate. Between bites, she looked up at him. "I'm curious. What made you stay last night? You didn't have to." Finn leaned back, arms resting on the table. I believe that actions mean more than words. He paused, choosing them carefully. I saw someone who needed help, and I couldn't turn away. Aria set down her fork, feeling an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. Most people would keep walking. He met her gaze steadily. Maybe they would, but I try not to be most people. Aria's mind raced. You really don't need to explain. He inclined his head. I know, but I want you to know you deserve it. Over the next hour, they talked about Aria's work as a photojournalist, about Finn's career designing docks and seawalls, about the small rituals that kept their world spinning, Aria's habit of reviewing her day in a private journal, Finn's custom of sketching ideas for his next project on napkins at Foglight Cafe. Aria found herself sharing more than she had with anyone in months. The frustration of being underappreciated in her field, the fear that her marriage had been a mistake, the hope that she could still find meaning beyond chasing the next big story.
Finn listened,
Nodding and offering gentle insights, never interrupting. At one point, Aria paused mid-sentence, studying his profile. You have a way of making me feel heard. He shrugged as he stirred his coffee. That's a rare gift. Tears threatened again, but Aria blinked them away. Thank you. Finn reached across the table, placing his hand briefly over hers. Anytime. Later that day, Aria returned to her loft, temporary since she'd checked out of the hospital, and found her phone buzzing with missed calls and messages. Agents checking in. Editors demanding her return. The chaos of her professional life rushed back. She realized with a pang that part of her wanted to rush back to that world, but another part hesitated. She sunk onto her couch, staring at Finn's note on the coffee table. Remember, kindness matters. Aria closed her eyes and pictured his patient expression in the cafe, the way he had listened without judgment. Suddenly, the endless deadlines and frantic headlines felt hollow. She reached for her notebook and began to write.
Today,
I met someone who reminded me what it means to be human. She paused, letting the words settle before adding. Kindness isn't a story to cover. It's a story to live. As dusk settled over Tidebrook, Aria realized she had found something more valuable than any exclusive interview or front-page scoop, a kindred spirit willing to share her burden, one ordinary moment at a time. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the stirring of hope. By midweek, the rain had eased to a gentle mist over Tidebrook Harbor, and Aria Vale found herself standing before the guardhouse at the entrance to the docks. She pulled her collar up against the damp air and watched Finn Hartley emerge from the gatehouse, clipboard in hand and a steady, confident stride. Morning, Aria, he greeted, lifting his cap in a practiced nod. The gravel crunched under his boots, releasing a faint metallic scent from the fog-wet steel around them. Ready for your first day as, officially, a project supervisor? Aria tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and returned his nod. Lead consultant, she corrected, stepping forward. But same difference. She smiled, excitement fluttering in her chest. Weeks ago, the idea would have been unthinkable, a photojournalist turned construction overseer. Yet here she was, clipboard of her own tucked under her arm, credentials already processed. Finn handed her a safety vest, bright orange against the gray haze. You'll need this, he said, draping it around her shoulders. Hard hat's in the truck. She snapped it on, feeling the weight and formality of the role settle around her. Thanks, she replied. For the past several days, Finn had quietly arranged for her to join the Tidebrook Wharf expansion project, an ambitious plan to extend the harbor's berths and reinforce its seawalls. He'd insisted that her investigative instincts and meticulous eye would benefit the site's quality control inspections. Aria wasn't entirely sure what she'd get out of it, other than more time with him, but she was eager to learn and grateful for the invitation. They climbed into Finn's pickup truck, and he led her through a maze of container yards and giant cranes until they reached the heart of the construction zone. Towering steel beams loomed overhead, and the occasional blast of a jackhammer shook the ground beneath them. Aria stepped out, her boots crunching gravel, and Finn guided her to a temporary office trailer. Its windows fogged with condensation. Inside, he passed her a stack of blueprints. "Here's the latest structural plan," he said. "We're adding a reinforced concrete cap atop those pilings. Your task is simple: review the vendor's specs, spot any inconsistencies, and report back." Aria studied the rolled drawings, nodding. "Got it. So I'll be the watchful eye." She glanced up at Finn. "Feels good to help build something tangible." He shrugged modestly. "I guess I just needed someone who asks the right questions." For the next 2 hours, Aria moved through the site alongside Finn. Clipboard in hand, she inspected the casting molds for the concrete blocks, noted variations in rebar alignments, and questioned the foreman about curing times. Finn watched her with quiet pride, occasionally offering clarifications. "Finn," pointing, "that block needs an extra hour in the steam chamber to meet our moisture specs." Aria noted. "And the vendor's documents say 1 hour. I'll update the log." Each exchange deepened their connection, her analytical mind engaging with his technical expertise. She admired the way he spoke to the crew, his calm firmness earning immediate respect. He, in turn, seemed drawn to her curiosity and attention to detail, leaning in when she highlighted a discrepancy in the supplier's paperwork. By midday, they paused for lunch at Foglight Cafe. The harbor view was mist-shrouded but still serene. Boats rocked gently, and the cafe's string lights cast a golden glow through the windows. They claimed their favorite corner booth, the one they discovered during Aria's first breakfast visit. "Same as yesterday?" Finn asked as they settled in. "Maple pancakes and a side of scrambled eggs this time," she replied, already feeling the comfort of routine. He flagged the waitress. "2 fog lights and a side of sunshine, please." He winked at Aria, referencing the cafe's signature pancake stack dressed with a pat of melting butter. She laughed, her nerves easing in the familiar banter. Over coffee and syrup-drenched pancakes, they traded stories. Finn recounted a childhood memory of learning carpentry with his grandfather at a summer camp on the Pacific coast, his eyes lighting up as he described the scent of cedar planks and the thrill of a well-fitted dovetail joint. Aria shared an account of tracking a typhoon's aftermath in the Philippines, photographing families rebuilding their homes. She spoke passionately about resilience and the power of documenting human stories. Between bites, their hands brushed as they reached for the syrup bottle. They both drew back, startled, smiles flickering on their lips. Aria caught her breath and looked at Finn, whose gaze was steady and warm. "Sorry," she whispered, but he merely shook his head. "No apologies needed," he said, voice low. "These moments, they're what make all the hard work worthwhile." Aria's heart thumped. She realized that the attraction between them wasn't confined to gratitude or camaraderie. It was something deeper and more unpredictable, a spark ignited by shared purpose, confirmed by subtle touches and gentle glances. After lunch, they returned to the site. The afternoon sun briefly broke through the clouds, casting glittering reflections off wet steel. Aria pointed out a minor misalignment in the formwork, and Finn knelt beside her, brushing a lock of rain-damp hair from her face before helping her realign the wooden panel. As they worked in tandem, he guiding, she holding the board, the air around them vibrated with unspoken tension. Their proximity, the shared task, every time their fingers met, an electric thrill passed between them. Aria had to remind herself to breathe. When the adjustment was complete, Finn stepped back and assessed the alignment. His eyes met hers, close enough that she could see the faint crinkle at the corner of his eyes. He nodded approvingly.
"Perfect," he said.
Aria tucked a stray hair behind her ear and squeezed her gripping hand. "Couldn't have done it without you." Finn brushed his thumb over her palm. "Likewise." The day wore on with more inspections, checking weld integrity on support brackets, confirming dimensions on new pilings, verifying concrete mixes. With each task, their synergy strengthened. Crew members whispered about the dynamic duo, and Aria realized with a smile that she didn't mind the attention. As the workday ended, Finn escorted her back to the trailer. The sky had cleared, leaving behind a crisp, cool twilight. He hesitated at the door, running a hand through his damp hair. "Aria, thanks for today." You were incredible. She felt a warm flush. Likewise. I learned more about structural engineering today than in any textbook. He laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. They stood in comfortable silence. The only sound the distant call of seagulls and the hum of idling machinery. Finn stepped closer, his shoulder brushing hers. Good night, he said softly. Aria met his gaze.
Good night, Finn.
She walked to her car with a light step, the evening's events replaying in her mind, his steady guidance, the touch of his hand, the look of genuine admiration in his eyes. In that moment, she understood that their partnership was evolving into something more fragile and beautiful than either had anticipated. As she drove home, the harbor lights faded behind her, but the warmth of their connection glowed brighter than any dawn. And for the first time in a long while, Aria felt she was exactly where she belonged. Emery Hartley's 6th birthday dawned bright and clear, an almost miraculous break in Tidebrook's rainy season. Finn Hartley had spent the early morning hovering over a kitchen table scattered with pastel streamers and half-inflated balloons. His brow furrowed as he tried to thread ribbon through a towering helium bouquet. Nolan, his 4-year-old son, pranced around in a pirate hat, brandishing a plastic sword as if daring the weather to storm again. Dad, hurry up, Nolan chirped, eyes gleaming with mischief. Guests are coming. Finn shot his son a wry smile and tied the final bow. Almost ready, buddy. Go help Grandma Marlowe set out the cupcakes. Nolan saluted with his toy sword and scampered off.
Finn exhaled,
smoothing the wrinkles from a tablecloth printed with Happy Birthday Emery in swirling lavender script. He paused, fingers lingering on the fabric, and realized how different this morning felt. Last year, he'd been alone, just packing lunchboxes for school and writing cheery notes on napkins. This year, the house hummed with energy, a living party in motion. His heart swelled. Downstairs, Aria Vale stood at the foot of the staircase, studying her reflection in the hallway mirror. She wore a soft blue dress, simple, elegant, and just the right shade to flatter her green eyes. Finn had suggested she come early to help with any last-minute details. She had accepted, partly out of gratitude, partly out of curiosity about this family that had welcomed her so warmly. With a deep breath, Aria tucked her cardigan over her shoulders and descended the stairs. She caught sight of Finn adjusting a banner over the mantel, tiny sailboats and seagulls, a nod to Tidebrook Harbor's maritime heritage. Need a hand, she offered, stepping forward. Finn turned, a strand of gray-tinged hair falling across his forehead. He flashed a grateful smile. Actually, yes. Could you lift that end while I secure it? They worked side by side, their shoulders brushing occasionally. Aria leaned in and for a moment, their eyes met, an exchange charged with unspoken emotion. She busied herself with the banner, knotting it neatly, determined not to let her pulse betray her feelings. Once the decorations were secured, Emery appeared in the doorway, her golden curls perched atop her head like a halo. She wore a lavender party dress covered in tiny silver stars.
Aria, Finn,
she exclaimed, rushing into Aria's arms. Is this for me? Aria scooped the birthday girl up and spun her around. Of course it is, Emery. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Emery giggled, patting her cheeks. Thank you. She wriggled free, heading toward a table brimming with cupcakes, small gift boxes wrapped in seafoam green paper, and a 3-tiered cake fashioned like a lighthouse. Finn joined them, ruffling Nolan's hair as the younger boy tumbled over with excitement. Ready to sing? He asked Emery, who nodded vigorously. Within minutes, the dining room was filled with family and a handful of close friends, neighbors from the docks, a couple of Aria's colleagues she had invited, and Mrs. Quinn, an older woman in a cardigans, who had driven in from the suburbs to congratulate Aria on her recent bylines. The singing began, Nolan's off-key, happy birthday nearly drowned out by Emery's delighted squeals. Finn ruffled Emery's hair again and helped her blow out the candles. The single wish she made seemed to hang in the air, suspended between laughter and frosting. Make a big wish, Finn urged softly, placing his hand gently on her shoulder. Emery closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and blew. The candles flickered out, and the room erupted in applause. Finn hugged her tight, and Aria set aside her camera to join the embrace. As the guests filed past, offering hugs and gifts, Aria found herself alone with Finn by the cake table. He leaned in, brushing a stray crumb from her shoulder. "She's so happy," he whispered, eyes shining with pride. Aria nodded, feeling warmth bloom in her chest. "You did an amazing job." She gestured to the cake. "Is that a lighthouse shipwreck?" He chuckled. "It's her favorite bedtime story, a lighthouse keeper and a storm-tossed vessel. I figured it was fitting." "Perfect," she replied. She met his gaze, and the world narrowed to just the two of them. The hum of conversation, the soft classical music playing on the stereo, and the gentle orbit of family around them. Suddenly, Emery tugged at Aria's hand. "Will you read me a story, Aunt Aria?" she asked, mistaking Aria's closeness for familial affection.
Aria laughed softly.
"Of course. Let me grab the book." She turned, and Finn's eyes followed her, the corner of his mouth tipping into a smile. In the living room, Aria settled on the couch with Emery perched beside her, Nolan curling up on the floor. Finn watched them for a moment, then walked away to refill coffee cups. Aria opened the well-worn leather cover of the Stormy lighthouse, her voice low and lyrical. As she read, she felt a light touch on her arm. Looking up, she found Finn standing over her, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. He knelt, presenting one to her. "Thought you might need this." She accepted it, the warmth seeping into her fingers. "Thank you." He stayed for a beat, eyes earnest. "I'm glad you're here." Her heart fluttered. "Me too." Just then, Emery yawned, blinking sleepily. Aria closed the book. "Time for cake and maybe bedtime stories," she said with a smile. As Finn scooped Emery into his arms to return her to the dining room, Aria watched their easy exchanges, the way they fit together, like 2 halves of a compass. The secret budding between them felt like a fragile bloom, beautiful, intoxicating, and utterly vulnerable. And as she sipped her cocoa, Aria realized that in witnessing the simple, sweet magic of Emery's birthday, she had discovered something precious of her own, a longing to become part of this family story, and to explore the tender possibility of us. The hush descended just after 10 o'clock. Tidebrook's streets outside had emptied, the birthday balloons drooping in the hallway, their pastel sheen dulled by fatigue. Inside, Finn Hartley guided a yawning Emery toward her bedroom, Nolan trailing behind in pajamas adorned with sailboats. Aria Vale followed, cradling a mug of decaf to stave off the late hour. "Night-night." "Pumpkin," Finn whispered, setting Emery on her soft paisley quilt. He tucked her in with practiced tenderness, smoothing a lock of hair from her forehead. Emery blinked sleepily. "Will you stay for my dream, Dad?" she mumbled. Finn planted a light kiss on her temple. "Just a minute, sweetheart. I'll be right back." He slipped silently out the door. As the door clicked shut, Emery's big brown eyes found Aria's across the room. "Aunt Aria?" she whispered, voice so soft it barely stirred the lavender curtains. Aria perched on the edge of the bed. "Yes, sweetie?" Emery hesitated, fingers intertwined on the blanket. "Can you stay a little longer? You can sleep on the couch." Aria's heart fluttered. "Of course." She rose and made her way to the small sofa in the corner, pulling a throw over her legs as Nolan curled next to her with a sleepy yawn. Finn returned, his face gentle. "All tucked in?" he asked.
"Yep," Aria replied softly.
"They're out like candles in the wind." Finn smiled, a flicker of weariness crossing his features. "Thanks for staying." He poured himself a cup of black tea from a thermos perched on the nightstand. His eyes lingered on Aria, grateful, tender, but shaded with something else. Apprehension. Before they could speak further, a soft creak drifted from the hallway. The door cracked open, and in stepped Marlo Hartley, Finn's mother, dressed in a wool cardigan and sensible loafers. She carried an air of protective vigilance. Her keen gray eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene, Aria wrapped in a blanket on the couch, Finn holding a teacup, and the faint glow of the children's nightlight spilling from the adjoining room. "Marlo," Finn greeted quietly, sliding the tea over to her. "I didn't hear you come in." She accepted the cup with a nod, but her gaze flicked to Aria. "I wanted to check on Emery after the cake." Her tone was warm but measured. "And I see you've made a new friend, Finn." Aria's stomach tightened. She'd sensed Marlo's curiosity earlier during the party, but now, in the dim lamplight, the scrutiny felt sharper. "Mrs. Hartley," she said softly. Finn held up a hand. "Mom, Aria's been a great help tonight. She stayed to keep the kids company." Marlo's eyes softened for a fraction of a second before returning to that careful appraisal. "I appreciate that," she said, turning her full attention on Aria. "Really, I do. It's just that, well, Finn's been through so much. His wife's absence, the kids, the docks, this household has its burdens. I worry about him." Aria nodded, lowering her eyes. "I understand. I care about him and the children. I'd never want to overstep." Marlo lifted a hand, as if halting a rushing tide of apologies. "You're kind, Aria. I can see that. But kindness sometimes causes people to cross lines they didn't intend to cross." She took a measured sip of tea. "I've known Finn since he was a boy, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't concerned about entanglements." Finn set down his cup, attention sharpened. "Mom, I trust Aria implicitly." Marlo gave him a steady look. "Trust is a fragile thing. You've been alone for a long time, Finn. It's natural to want companionship, but Emery and Nolan need stability, not confusion." Aria's pulse raced. "I'm not here to replace anyone," she said gently. "I simply stayed late because the kids asked and because I wanted to help." Marlo's expression softened slightly, but worry lingered in her gaze. "I believe you, but I also believe it's my duty to protect my grandchildren. If things ever start to escalate, you must promise me you'll step back." Finn bristled. "Mom." "Finn," Marlo interrupted, voice firm though kind, "I only ask for honesty." She turned to Aria. "And you, dear, if you truly care for this family, you'll understand why I'm cautious." Aria swallowed. "I do. I promise." She met Marlo's gaze, sincerity shining in her eyes. "Your grandchildren mean the world to me now." Marlo's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes darted toward the hallway. "Well, it's late. I'll let you two get some rest, both of you." She offered a small, patient smile. "Good night, dear." "Good night, Mrs. Hartley," Aria replied, voice steady. As Marlo closed the door behind her, a hush settled once more. Finn exhaled heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry," he said, his tone vulnerable. "Mom, she means well." Aria shook her head. "No apology needed. She's looking out for you and the kids. I wouldn't have it any other way." Finn crossed the room and sank onto the couch beside Aria. He hesitated, reaching out to brush a damp lock of hair from her forehead. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he murmured. Aria leaned into his touch. "I know." She laid her head on his shoulder. "But I also know you have a good heart. We'll navigate this together." Finn closed his eyes, resting his temple against hers. "Together," he echoed. Behind them, the soft glow of Emery's nightlight pulsed like a heartbeat, reminding them of all that was at stake: children's trust, a mother's concern, and two adults learning to balance friendship, gratitude, and the stirring promise of something more. In that quiet moment, they stood at the eye of their own approaching storm, bracing for the gusts to come, but united in the determination to weather it side by side. The early morning sun slanted through the tall windows of the Tidebrook County Courthouse, casting long, solemn beams across the marbled floor. Aria Vale sat in the small anteroom outside Judge Mendoza's chambers, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her chest constricted with anxiety, but beneath it all lay a fierce determination. Today, she would reclaim her life. Finn Hartley arrived moments later, his usual confident stride tempered by the hush of the setting. He paused in the doorway, taking an Aria's composed, if anxious, figure. She looked up, their eyes meeting. He offered a small nod of support. They entered the courtroom together. Ezra Quinn already stood at the plaintiff's table, his tailored navy suit impeccable, his expression guarded. Aria's attorney, a poised woman named Marisol Reyes, guided her to the defendant's table beside Finn. The tension was electric. Two worlds colliding, Aria's painful past and Finn's tentative present. Bailiff, quietly, all rise for the Honorable Judge Isabella Mendoza. The gavel fell. Judge Mendoza, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair pulled back, peered over her glasses. Please be seated. Her voice was calm but firm. Judge Mendoza, we are here in the matter of Quinn v. Vale, regarding the dissolution of marriage. Ms. Vale, you may present your opening statement. Aria inhaled, lifted her chin, and rose. Her voice, steady and clear, filled the hushed courtroom.
Aria.
Your Honor, I stand before you today to end a marriage that has deteriorated beyond repair. My husband, Dr. Ezra Quinn, and I have been estranged for over a year. During our marriage, I experienced emotional neglect and episodes of verbal and physical aggression. I attempted reconciliation numerous times, counseling sessions, mediated discussions, individual therapy, but Ezra's commitments to his career and unwillingness to address his behavior left me feeling unsafe and unloved. I can no longer endure the fear that any disagreement might escalate into violence. I request the court grant me a full dissolution of marriage, fair division of assets, and primary custody of our cat, Tilly. The brief mention of Tilly drew a small, sympathetic smile from the gallery. Ezra's jaw tightened. Finn sat forward, concern etched on his face. Judge Mendoza. Thank you, Ms. Vale. Dr. Quinn, do you wish to respond? Ezra rose, removing his glasses. His voice was measured, but strained. Ezra, Your Honor, I acknowledge the end of my marriage to Aria. However, I dispute the extent of her allegations. While our relationship faced difficulties, I maintain that I never engaged in physical violence. Any raised voices were mutual expressions of frustration. I have supported Aria financially and respect her wish for divorce. But I intend to seek an equitable division of our assets, including the loft on Maple Street and joint custody of our cat. His eyes flicked toward Aria, a mix of regret and defensiveness. Judge Mendoza. Thank you, Dr. Quinn. Ms. Vale, please call your first witness. Marisol Reyes nodded and gestured to the clerk. Within moments, Detective Lena Marsh took the stand. She had investigated a domestic disturbance call placed by Aria 6 months prior. Marisol Reyes. Detective Marsh, can you recount the events of that evening? Detective Marsh. Yes. On the night of January 14th, we responded to a 911 call from Ms. Vale reporting that her husband had forcefully grabbed her arm and pushed her against a wall. I documented visible bruising on her right forearm and observed significant emotional distress. Mr. Quinn expressed remorse at the scene. I filed a report for the record. She produced photographs of Aria's bruised arm, taken on a cell phone minutes after the incident. The images displayed throbbing, purple welts. Ezra's face paled. Judge Mendoza. Dr. Quinn. Do you wish to cross-examine? Ezra shook his head. He sat heavily, gaze fixed on the table. Marisol called her next witness, Ms. Vivian Clark, the couple's former marriage counselor. She testified to Ezra's unwillingness to engage in constructive therapy and his frequent absences due to urgent medical emergencies, leaving Aria waiting alone in the counseling office. After 2 more witnesses, including Aria's close friend Jordan Ellis, who described giving her shelter after several late-night calls, Reyes rested her case. Ezra stood again. His attorney, Mr. Paul Winters, delivered his defense. He presented financial records showing Aria's successful freelance income and argued that she could retain the loft without his contribution. He downplayed the February incident where Ezra accidentally knocked her wrist while grabbing at a thrown coffee mug, describing it as a minor mishap. Finally, Judge Mendoza called for closing statements. Aria rose. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice rang true. Aria. Your Honor, I sought to preserve my marriage, But when safety and dignity are compromised, one must choose self-preservation. I ask for a clean break, fair division of our joint property, and sole ownership of the loft on Maple Street, which I have financed entirely since December. Ezra's attorneys spoke briefly, requesting equitable distribution and offering joint ownership of Tilly. Ezra himself said nothing. The courtroom held its breath as Judge Mendoza paused before delivering her ruling. Judge Mendoza, having reviewed the evidence, the detailed police report, medical photographs, testimony from a counselor and witnesses, I find sufficient grounds for a contested divorce. I hereby grant Ms. Vale's sole ownership of the marital residence at 402 Maple Street and 60% of the marital assets, given the documented neglect and documented abuse.
Dr.
Quinn shall pay spousal support of 25% of his net income for 12 months. As for custody of the cat, Tilly shall reside with Ms. Vale, and Dr. Quinn may visit twice monthly. This court encourages both parties to maintain civility moving forward. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Aria exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Relief and sadness mingled in her chest. She returned to her seat as Finn reached over, lightly placing his hand on hers. She gave his hand a fleeting squeeze. Ezra lowered his head, fidgeting with his tie. He rose and departed without looking back. Marisol guided Aria and Finn to a quiet hallway outside. Marisol Reyes, congratulations, Aria. You did it. Aria nodded, tears threatening again. Thank you for everything. Finn stepped forward, his voice low and earnest. I'm so proud of you. He hesitated, then asked, Can I take you somewhere? Get dinner? You deserve celebration. Aria managed a tired smile. I'd like that. They left the courthouse together, stepping into the bright afternoon sunshine. For Aria, it marked both an end and a beginning, the end of a painful chapter and the opening of a new one, filled with possibility. And by her side, Finn, a steadfast anchor in her storm-tossed life, walked forward with her, uncertain but hopeful of what lay ahead. The afternoon light slanted through the blinds of Aria Vale's apartment, painting golden bars across her weary face. She stood in the bathroom, heart pounding as she stared at the two pink lines faintly glowing on the pregnancy test. Her breath caught, and then shattered into ragged pieces. Joy surged first, a small, thrilling bloom of hope. Then panic followed like a shadow, dark and insistent. She sank onto the closed toilet lid, cradling the test. The implications cascaded through her mind in dizzying waves. A new life intertwined with Finn's, the promise of family she'd only dared imagine in stolen moments. But also the responsibilities, emotional, financial, physical, that threatened to overwhelm her fragile resolve. She pressed her forehead to her knees and whispered into the cool tile, What have I done? When Finn arrived later that evening, he found Aria curled on the sofa, arms wrapped around a throw pillow. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually composed posture slumped. He sat beside her, gently draping an arm around her shoulders. Hey, he said softly. How are you feeling? She lifted her head, trepidation and hope warring in her gaze. She held out the pregnancy test. Finn took it, inspecting the lines. His breath hitched. Aria's voice trembled.
I'm pregnant.
I didn't plan it, but... Finn's free hand went to her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had escaped. That's incredible. He paused, uncertainty flickering across his face. Are you okay? She swallowed hard. I don't know. I'm happy, but I'm terrified. I've never been good at anything that lasts. Her words broke, and she pressed into his chest. Finn held her as she wept quietly. After a long moment, he brushed his lips against her temple. We'll figure it out together, he promised. I'll be here, every step of the way. The next morning, Finn and Aria sat in the waiting room of Harborview Women's Center. Aria's hand trembled in Finn's as they completed intake forms. A nurse called them back, and they followed into a softly lit exam room. The sonographer, Nurse Patel, greeted them with a warm smile. "Congratulations," she said, gesturing for Aria to lie on the table. The cold gel stung as the ultrasound wand pressed against her lower abdomen. Aria squeezed Finn's hand, eyes fixed on the monitor. The grainy black and white image resolved into a tiny shape, flickering with a rhythmic motion, a heartbeat. Relief and wonder washed over Aria as she stared at the life growing inside her. "That's your baby," Nurse Patel said, voice gentle. "About 8 weeks along, strong heartbeat at 160 beats per minute. Everything looks healthy." Tears sprang to Aria's eyes, this time tears of awe. She turned to Finn, who had tears in his own eyes as he traced the tiny pulsing dot on the screen. "We were parents," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Aria nodded, a sob of joy escaping her. Parents. Over the following days, Aria's emotions swirled like a storm. Mornings brought nausea and exhaustion that left her bedridden. Afternoons found her consumed with fear over finances, her fledgling freelance income already stretched thin. Night brought vivid dreams of tiny hands and hopeful laughter, only to awaken in cold sweats. Finn stepped into the breach with unwavering devotion. He researched high-risk pregnancy care, scheduled appointments, and drove her to each one. He transformed the guest room into a soothing nest, soft pastel curtains, a plush armchair, a changing table assembled with tender precision. One evening, as Aria rested on the couch, Finn returned from the bakery with a loaf of whole-grain bread and freshly squeezed orange juice. He set them on the coffee table, then knelt before her. "I know things feel chaotic," he said, voice gentle. "But you're not alone. We've got a plan." He unfurled a notebook filled with charts, nutrition guidelines, doctor's appointments, budget projections. Each entry was meticulously detailed, framed by doodles of little footprints. Aria traced the footprint sketches, laughter and tears mingling on her cheeks. "You're amazing." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. "We're in this together." Despite Finn's support, Aria's inner turmoil deepened when Hartley arrived for a surprise visit. Marlowe found Aria in the kitchen, struggling to stand as a wave of nausea washed over her. She clutched the countertop and closed her eyes. Marlowe's maternal instincts flared. She hurried to Aria's side, guiding her to a chair. "Oh, my dear," she murmured, wiping Aria's brow with a cool hand. "You're carrying Finn's child. I can't thank you enough for blessing this family." Aria forced a grateful smile, but her heart pounded. She felt exposed, beneath Marlowe's affectionate gaze, her doubts and insecurities laid bare. "I want to do right by him, by all of you, but I'm scared I'll fail." Marlowe settled beside her, her tone soft but firm. "Being scared doesn't mean you're unfit. It means you care. Finn, and I believe in you." Aria closed her eyes, absorbing the unexpected acceptance. But beneath that comfort lay another worry, Marlowe's caution in earlier days. Her remarks about stepping back, if things escalated. Aria wondered whether Marlowe's support would waver now that the stakes were so high. "Thank you," Aria whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you." Marlowe patted her hand. "And you'll never have to find out." That night, Aria lay awake, Finn asleep beside her. She stared at the ceiling, mind alight with questions. Could she balance motherhood and her career? Would Finn always stand by her? Was she treading into a world of irrevocable change she wasn't ready for? She slipped from the bed and found Finn in the guest room, organizing baby clothes he'd bought. He looked up, bleary-eyed but concerned. "Can't sleep?" he asked, setting down a tiny onesie embroidered with little harbor helper. Aria sat beside him on the floor. "I'm scared I'm not good enough for the baby for you."
Finn paused,
then wrapped her in his arms. "You're more than good enough. But if you ever doubt it, just remember how much I love you and our child." He stroked her hair. "I know this wasn't exactly planned, but it's ours now, and I wouldn't change a thing." Aria closed her eyes, letting his convictions soothe her fear. In that moment, she knew, though the road ahead would twist through uncertainty, she wouldn't walk it alone. As dawn broke over Tidebrook Harbor, bathing their apartment in soft pink light. Aria rose with a steady purpose. She padded into the nursery, where Marlowe had left a "Welcome, baby" card atop a pile of handmade blankets. Below the card, a note read, "We'll weather every storm together. Love, Mom Marlowe." Aria's chest tightened with gratitude. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, financial strains, emotional turmoil, medical worries, but here lay the promise of an unbreakable support system, Finn's unwavering devotion, and Marlowe's protective love. She took a deep breath, brushing her fingertips over the blankets. Then, with resolve shining in her eyes, Aria stepped back into the light, ready to embrace the joy and face the crisis, hand in hand with the family she was about to call her own. The morning sunlight filtered through the lofty windows of the Tidebrook County Courthouse, casting long, solemn bands of light across the polished mahogany benches. Inside, the air was electric with anticipation. Neighbors, family friends, and several local journalists packed the gallery, whispers rippling through the room as they waited for the custody hearing to begin. At the front, 3 tables formed a shallow U, facing Judge Isabella Mendoza's raised bench. To the left sat Isla Hartley, her posture composed, face a mask of calm determination. Her attorney, Mr. Paul Winters, sat beside her, shuffling documents. To the right were Finn Hartley and Aria Vale, seated together with Aria's attorney, Marisol Reyes, poised and ready. Between them lay the future of Emery, 6, and Nolan, 4, the children who had come to depend upon Finn and Aria's daily care. A sharp rap of the gavel brought the courtroom to attention. Judge Mendoza, steel-gray hair pulled back into a neat bun, peered over her glasses. "We are here to determine the custodial arrangements for the minor children of Mr. and Mrs. Hartley. Counsel, you may proceed with opening statements." Her tone was measured, conveying the gravity of the decision before her. Mr. Winters rose first. He approached the podium with easy confidence, his polished shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. "Your Honor," he began, voice smooth and practiced, "Mrs. Isla Hartley has served as a devoted mother to Emery and Nolan since their births. Though her medical outreach work took her overseas, she maintained weekly video contact, provided financial support, and assured her children of her unwavering love. Now that she has returned permanently, she seeks primary custody to offer them the consistent motherly presence they deserve. We are confident the court will recognize that the children's best interests lie in reunification with their mother." He nodded toward Isla, who offered a brief, gracious smile before returning her gaze to the judge. Marisol Reyes stood next. She moved with quiet authority, her dark hair pinned back, eyes bright with conviction. "Your Honor, while Mrs. Hartley's intentions are honorable, the children's immediate welfare must take precedence. Since Mrs. Hartley's departure 3 years ago, Mr. Hartley has been their sole day-to-day caretaker. He and Ms. Aria Vale have built a stable, nurturing environment, establishing routines, providing emotional support, and ensuring the children's academic and social development. Tracing bonds of attachment and continuity, removing Emery and Nolan from their current home risks severe emotional harm. We ask the court to grant joint legal custody and maintain primary physical custody with Mr. Hartley and Ms. Vale for at least 12 months before reevaluation." Reyes sat, her gaze unwavering. Judge Mendoza nodded. "Very well. Mrs. Hartley's counsel may call the first witness." Marlowe Hartley, Finn's mother, was the initial witness. She took the stand with a quiet dignity. Under direct examination, she testified to the transformation she had witnessed in Finn since Isla's extended absence. "He has been both mother and father to those children," Marlowe explained, her voice thick with emotion. "He prepared their meals every morning, helped with remote schooling assignments, and read them bedtime stories without fail. His love and Ms. Vale's support has created a home filled with laughter and security." Marlowe glanced toward Aria and offered a gentle nod of respect. Mr. Winters cross-examined, reminding Marlowe of her initial concerns about Aria's role. "You cautioned against Ms. Vale overstepping boundaries out of concern," he said. Marlowe met his gaze squarely.
True.
I warned her to maintain propriety. She honored that caution and earned our trust by caring for my grandchildren, not by replacing their mother. Her answer underscored Aria's integrity, eliciting approving nods from the gallery. Next, the prosecution called Vivian Clark, director of Tidebrook Learning Center, where both children attended kindergarten. Clark described the children's emotional and academic progress under Finn and Aria's guidance. Emery excels in reading and math and demonstrates strong social skills. Nolan, initially shy, has blossomed into a confident participant in class activities. The consistency of their daily routine, shared meals, homework time, bedtime rituals, has been crucial. Any abrupt change could undermine their stability. Under cross-examination, Clark conceded that Mrs. Hartley's virtual interactions had been beneficial but could not replicate the reassurance of physical presence. With the foundation of the current caregiving environment established, the defense called Mrs. Hartley to testify. Isla rose gracefully, her voice calm and measured as she described her deep love for her children. She presented logs of weekly video calls, screenshots of smiling faces, digital calendars marked with mommy and me time, and emails coordinating holiday plans. My work in Lisbon's rural clinics was vital, Isla explained. But I never wanted distance to be perceived as neglect. My intention upon return is to resume daily parenting. Her sincerity was palpable. A few attendees whispered approval. Marisol Reyes then began cross-examination. Mrs. Hartley, during those calls, did Emery ever express a desire to be with her father instead? Isla paused. She said she missed him, she admitted, but we spoke about reuniting soon. Reyes pressed gently. In 3 years. Were there any in-person visits? Isla's eyes flickered. Brief visits when I had short-term leave, but mostly I traveled for 6-month assignments. The admission highlighted the physical absence Marisol had anticipated as pivotal to the children's attachments. Judge Mendoza glanced down at her notes before calling for Mr. Hartley's testimony. Finn approached the stand, hand clasped nervously around his attorney's file. He spoke earnestly about his partnership with Isla before her departure. We agreed to support each other's careers. I believed I could handle parenting alone for a time, but when my own capacity was stretched thin, I turned to Aria Vale. She did not replace anyone. She helped nourish, teach, and guide my children when I needed support. They know her as someone who tucks them in, comforts their tears, and cheers their achievements. He paused, voice catching. Please allow me to continue providing that consistent presence. Isla watched him, her expression unreadable, equal parts pride and pain. Finn returned to his seat, eyes wet but resolute. Finally, Aria Vale took the stand. She spoke with heartfelt clarity about her role in the children's lives. I was cautious entering this family, she said, knowing the delicate circumstances. Yet I found my place in their laughter, their learning, and their quiet moments of fear. Uprooting them now, at this fragile age, would fracture their sense of safety. She held the children's artwork as evidence. Crayon portraits of the Hartley home, signed Love, Emery and Nolan, a testament to the children's attachments. Under cross-examination, she affirmed she sought neither to supplant their mother nor to jeopardize familial bonds. My sole aim is to ensure these children feel loved and secure, she concluded. As closing arguments commenced, Mr. Winters reminded the court that biology and maternal rights merited reinstatement of Mrs. Hartley's physical custody. He emphasized the importance of a mother's touch and presence, urging the court to reunite the children with their birth mother. Marisol Reyes countered. The law's highest regard is the best interest of the child, measured by emotional well-being and stability. For the last 3 years, that best interest has been served by Mr. Hartley and Ms. Vale. A gradual transition may follow, but now, abrupt change would cause undue harm. Judge Mendoza then retired to deliberation. The gallery murmured, tension coiling tight as a spring. After what felt like an eternity, she returned, her robe whispering against the wood floor. Having reviewed the evidence, she began, I conclude that while Mrs. Hartley's commitment is commendable, Her prolonged absence has shifted the children's primary attachments to Mr. Hartley and Ms. Vale. Relocating them now would pose substantial risk of emotional distress. She paused, allowing her words to settle. Therefore, I grant joint legal custody to both parents. Physical custody will remain with Mr. Hartley and Ms. Vale for the next 12 months, during which Mrs. Hartley shall have supervised visitation on weekends and extended periods during school breaks. At the end of that period, the court will reevaluate and consider expanded unsupervised visitation, with the long-term intent of equal physical custody. A collective exhale rippled through the courtroom. Isla's shoulders slumped, tears glistening in her eyes, but she nodded in acceptance. Finn reached across to take Aria's hand under the table, her fingers curled around his with relief and gratitude. Marlowe dabbed her cheeks, choking back tears of pride. After the gavel fell, the formalities concluded, the principals gathered in a small anteroom. Isla approached Finn first, extending her hand. "Thank you for caring for them," she said softly, her voice thick. "I will work to rebuild my bond." Finn grasped her hand. "I know you will. We'll make this work, for the children." Aria joined them. "They're lucky to have you," she told Isla. "We're all in this together now." Isla nodded, offering a tentative smile. "Thank you, Aria." Outside, the sun shone brightly over Tidebrook Harbor as Finn and Aria escorted the children to lunch before taking them to Isla's weekend visit. As Emi and Nolan skipped ahead, laughing at Nolan's pirate hat, Aria felt a profound sense of purpose, not as a substitute mother, but as a steadfast guardian, partner, and friend to both parents. The custody battle had tested every relationship, blood ties, chosen family, and the fragile cords of trust, but from its crucible emerged a blueprint for co-parenting grounded in compassion, stability, and above all, the children's well-being. And as the harbor breeze carried the children's laughter away, Aria and Finn stepped forward, united in their commitment to weather any storm for the sake of those two little hearts they both cherished. The tide rolled gently into Tidebrook Harbor under a late afternoon sky painted in lavender and rose. Seagulls drifted overhead in a lazy V formation, their calls echoing against the warehouse walls and weathered pilings. Aria Vale stood at the water's edge, the cold salt breeze tangling her hair around her shoulders. Her hand rested protectively on her rounded belly, the subtle life within her stirring in time with the rhythmic pulse of the harbor waves. She had come here, the very pier where she and Finn had first met on that stormy night, not out of nostalgia alone, but seeking clarity. The custody battle was over. The hearing had granted Finn and Aria primary physical custody of Emi and Nolan for the coming year, with Isla's supervised visits on weekends and holidays. The resolution was imperfect, but it offered a fragile stability, a truce in a turbulent chapter. Now, as she faced the water, Aria let herself feel the weight of what lay ahead: motherhood, co-parenting, the delicate balance of blended families. Her thoughts drifted back to the midnight rain that brought her to Finn's kindness, to the quiet breakfasts at Foglight Cafe, to the courtroom battles where she testified not just as a witness, but as a guardian of two small lives. She remembered the first flutter of the ultrasound heartbeat, the moment Finn and she stood shoulder to shoulder in a cold exam room, tears and wonder mingling when the tiny pulse appeared on the screen. She recalled the nights in the guest room, her fears rising like tides, and Finn's patient reassurance, his hand on her back, his voice a gentle anchor through waves of doubt. Tonight, with the sky shifting toward indigo and the pier lanterns flickering on, Aria felt an unexpected calm. She closed her eyes, letting the salt-scented breeze wash over her, carrying memories of the past and whispers of promise for the future. She had found love in broken places and forged a family where none had existed before. And now, with another life to protect, she faced the limitless horizon with cautious hope. A soft footstep made her open her eyes. Finn approached, carrying 2 paper cups of hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, just the way she liked. He offered her a cup, his dark eyes warm in the fading light. "You look peaceful," he said, slipping his arm around her shoulders. She accepted the cup, drawing its warmth against her palms. I'm thinking about everything that's happened, she replied, voice low. About how a single choice, walking onto this pier in the rain, changed my life. Finn nodded, following her gaze toward the water. And it changed mine, he said. I never imagined that night would lead us here. Aria leaned into him, resting her head on his chest. She could feel the steady beat of his heart under her ear, a comforting rhythm that had carried her through fear and joy. We've weathered so much storm, she murmured, and yet here we stand. He kissed the top of her head. And we'll weather whatever comes next. His fingers traced gentle circles on her abdomen. I can't wait to meet our little one. A soft wind gusted off the harbor, and Aria closed her eyes again. She imagined tiny hands wrapping around her finger, a small face lifting upward in recognition of her voice. She envisioned Emery's wide-eyed delight in becoming an older sister, Nolan's protective grin, Isla's evolving role as a grandmother and mother on weekends. The tapestry of relationships stretched before her, complex, messy, beautiful. Behind them, the hulking silhouette of the freighter they had inspected last week rested against the twilight. The crane's arm reached skyward like an outstretched hand, waiting to unload the next day's cargo. Just as the harbor served as a nexus of commerce, bringing together vessels, workers, and the sea, Aria realized her life was a harbor of hearts, hers, Finn's, the children's, Isla's, and Marlowe's. Each relationship required trust, constant tending, and the willingness to let the tides ebb and flow without fear. A distant horn sounded, announcing a departing vessel, and seagulls wheeled across the horizon. Aria smiled, lifting her cup. To new voyages, she toasted softly. Finn clinked his cup against hers. To new voyages, he echoed, voice thick with emotion. He drew her close, careful not to press too hard against her belly. Whatever comes, he said, I'll be here, with you. His hand slid to rest over hers on her belly, as if introducing himself to their child. We'll show them the world we believe in. Aria pressed her cheek against his jacket, breathing in the scent of cedarwood and salt air. I believe in you, she whispered. He tilted her chin to meet his lips. And I believe in you. Below them, the tide slipped in and out, a soft lullaby for seal pups and sea urchins hidden beneath the dock. Aria imagined her child dancing to that lullaby before birth, rocking gently with the waves. She thought of Emery and Nolan, their laughter and questions, and saw their faces light up at the news of a baby sibling. She pictured Isla's tears of joy, Marlowe's proud laughter, and Marisol Reyes's high fives at her final court victory. Aria exhaled a slow breath, savoring the fullness of the moment. The harbor stretched out before her, vast, unpredictable, alive. So, too, would her life, shaped by storms and sunshine, challenges and celebrations. Yet, in that uncertain expanse, she felt a deep, unshakable certainty. That love, chosen or born of blood, would guide her family through every high and low tide. She tightened her arm around Finn, the hot chocolate growing cold forgotten in her grip. Let's go home, she said. I want to see Emery and Nolan before bedtime. He smiled and offered her his arm. Lead the way, Captain, he teased.
Aria laughed,
her hand flying to her belly, as if to include their unborn child in the jest. All aboard, she declared. Next stop, home. Hand in hand, they walked back along the pier, the harbor lights dancing in their eyes. Behind them, the last rays of the sun dipped below the distant horizon, leaving the water shimmering with possibility. And as the evening breeze carried their laughter away, Aria knew that this ending, this radiant, hopeful beginning, would shape the story of their lives forever. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.